Axel, it's a pleasure to see you again. Welcome to the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pete. I'm glad we could make the time.
Yeah, we met a month or so ago when I was actually on your podcast. It's good to see you again. And, as fellow podcasters, always good to have another conversation around stuff that's interesting to our listeners. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the time freedom point, and really excited about this concept that you have and investing in to reach that time freedom point. So, kick us off, Axel, on what is the time freedom point?
Yeah, the time freedom point is, for one, I want to make it sure people understand a personal number that you want to find for yourself. And that number correlates to a point on the calendar that you, to some extent, determine yourself at a point in the future. And it stands for the point in time where you reach the freedom to use your time to do the things that you're passionate about. And that can be what your job is and what you do right now. If you're one of the lucky people who do exactly what they love to do, then it would only mean I reach a number of passive income every month that allows me to cover everything that I have in expenses and my fun activities and stuff like that. And I don't have to worry about income anymore. And I can keep doing what I'm passionate about. What I'm finding is more people are in a situation where they may have been passionate about what they're doing for a little while or for some time, but it's no longer the case right now. But they can't get out of it because they need it as an income source. So they're exchanging their time for money. And the time freedom point would be the point on the calendar in the future where they no longer have to do that because they used an investing strategy like we're suggesting, using real estate, to generate passive income, so you don't have to exchange the time for money anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I talk a lot about this too. And I put it in perspective of transforming your frustrations into freedoms. And what are those freedoms that you want? You want your time back. You want to live, and do what you want to do and live in your genius zone. And like, I have a tool called Love It or Leave It. It's like you really want to work in your love it area within your business so that, the work that you do gives you energy. It doesn't drain you of everything. And that, I love this idea around the time freedom point and how to create that, and creating, whether it be real estate, like we'll talk about today, or whether what I talk about a lot of times is creating a turnkey business as opposed to, turnkey investing. Because in a way, your business is like real estate too. And how can you create that turnkey business to give you that time freedom point? So I think we're really on similar pages here
Yeah,
around this.
absolutely. And I actually, I really appreciate that you bring that up, Pete, because I want people to understand, and this is oftentimes, especially when people look at it through the lens of an employee, very misunderstood, that there are really two different kinds of companies. So I'm really making a distinction. You have a company, but the next level below, the question is, okay, is this company a practice or is this company a business? Now, if it is a
Exactly.
business and it provides a service or creates a product or stuff like that, then you can systematize it and structure it, and basically, ultimately, I guess when we use our language about the freedom we want to generate from a business perspective, you kind of extricate yourself out of your own business, either ultimately through selling it or through putting all the systems and steps in so that you mainly become still retain to be the owner, but you don't need to be there and do the work on a daily basis to keep it running. And the other distinction that I think for the audience to realize and really ask yourself if you're in that situation is, do I have a business like we just described, or do I actually have a practice?
Yeah.
Where it is much harder, because if practice distinguishes itself, that it's basically pretty much dependent on you, right? If you say, okay, I'm a dentist has typically a practice, right? And if the dentist is out, then no teeth get fixed, right? And so it doesn't have to be a dentist or medical. In my case, when my main business before I started in this real estate endeavor with Idea Wealth Grower and the podcast and all of it, was consulting.
Yeah.
And believe me, I tried many, many times to claim that it's a business and it can be sold. And I have all kinds of cool people that I could hook you up, Mr. and Mrs. Klein. But in the end, they said, no, We want your solution. We want you. We want what other people told us about you, not about somebody else. And because it is a special kind of service with a special kind of skills, it's not easily transferable to somebody else. And if I step out, if the dentist goes, you can maybe sell the client list, but the clients will all say, well, we got all this stuff from Pete, or we got all this stuff from Axel, and who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
So that
Then
distinction
it's
is
not
really,
turnkey, right?
yeah, well, exactly. And that's why it's so important to say, yes, it is a company, but is it a practice or is it a business? And if it is a business, what can I do to actually come up with an exit strategy so that I can actually get more and more freedom back? And I would agree with you in the connection is that activity, whether you're an employee or you're working in a business, should always include some foresight in how do I manage my money so that I can build assets and value that ultimately allows me to do the things that I really want to do. And not necessarily because I have to, but you might want to develop a skill that doesn't pay. Like, I mean, unless you become suddenly famous or whatever, painting is one of those, right? A lot of people love to paint, but not because they get paid for it. But it still takes a while to develop that skill. So there are these aspects. And if you speculate that your business is sellable for enough money so you don't have to work anymore, then that's to some extent a speculation. That's why I say, well, if you don't want to speculate, then do something on a regular basis with discipline. If you in the end sell your business, you're just going to be so much better off. If for whatever reason it doesn't work out and you still get all this passive income and reach your time freedom point, then it's icing on the cake, or it's not, but you have still everything you need to live your passion.
I love that. And couple of things that I liked. I like that differentiation between a practice and a business. And I like the idea and that talk about your passion, and sometimes it doesn't pay your passion. And for those of you who are watching, in behind me I've got a couple of instruments and played in bands for many, many years. And when I looked at that, I used to have a fun joke around the idea that if you wanted to make $1 million playing in a bluegrass band, you better start with 2 million. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like it was I called it a paid hobby, but it was something that basically cost me more than I ever earned. But it's something I was passionate about and like to do. And that's the beauty when you set up turnkey investments, when you set up a turnkey business, it allows you the opportunity to step out and do some of the things you really want to do, not be mired down in the frustration of every day working through all these different things. And, part of what you do at Ideal Wealth Growers is set up turnkey investments in real estate. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how, for the entrepreneurs that are listening here, how that's transformed maybe a few other business owners into giving them the life that they want to lead?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Pete. So fundamentally, I think I want people to get for a moment into the mindset to say, if I had to do something, put something together for myself, wouldn't I want to work with as many experts in the different things that I need to get there as fast as possible? That's kind of the premise. If you take that as a picture in your mind, and now let's go into the turnkey approach. So the first thing is you probably, and I highly recommend, you want lending money to buy the real estate besides what you have in your own pocket or in your own savings account. So
Right.
you want to have an expert lender. Now, I recommend lenders that operate nationwide, so you don't have to get a new one every time you buy a property in a different state or city.
Right.
Then you want somebody who knows inside out because they renovate 100 places a year or 20 places a month. That's kind of like the scale that we're talking about on a regular basis. So that entity has a team that does nothing else than renovating properties, single family, duplex, triplex properties. Then, besides that, you want a team that works on behalf of the owners of properties, of these kind of single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex properties, to manage them, find tenants, collect the rent, fix the faucet, take the calls, do the paperwork, do the lease agreements, all that kind of stuff. And that's all they do, and they become experts in that on a scale of anywhere between a few hundred properties up to several thousand under their management.
Right.
And then you come along and say, okay, what I want is a property where I put 20% down. The bank, these experts, nationwide operating bank, gives me 80% of the money. And now I want to work with what I call a true turnkey provider who finds a property. I call that the ugly duckling in the neighborhood, renovates it with that expert team, then sells it to me for a market rate price, which means when my bank sends an appraiser, it actually appraises for the value that they're asking for, no haggling. And then I become the owner, and it immediately within the same organization switches over to that property management organization who manages for me. And all I need to do is make a little spreadsheet and say property one, $300 left every month goes into my accumulation account, and I can count on that on my journey to the time freedom point. And as soon as I have that, I turn around and say, and this is what we do with our clients, I say, okay, where do we start the second round for the second process for getting property two? And if you say, let's just for the sake of argument say, okay, your number that you set yourself, if it were achievable today, is $3,600 a month, and you get 300 per property, then you know that you need 12 properties. Now, most people can do that over in a year or two. So if you look over time, the reality is you probably need something like 8 or 10 because the rent is increasing, the value is increasing, and so forth. So yes, if every single one would always only ever pay you $300 a month, then it would be 12. But nobody has lived for 8 or 10 years in the same place paying rent without ever the rent being increased, right? So
Exactly.
rent increases, the costs stay the same with a fixed mortgage. So end of the story is each of these properties is going to slowly increase in how much is left over at the end of the month for you. And so 8 to 10 properties, you have your 3,600. Now your number may be 4,500 or
Right. Yeah.
2,500 or whatever
Yeah.
your number is.
It's
But
just an
the beauty,
equation.
yeah, exactly. And the last point I would like to say about it is the beauty is if you start out to say, I want to get 10 to 12 properties to get to my time freedom point number of 3,600 today's value. The beauty is that when you reach that point or getting close to it, keep in mind that all these people sitting in these 8, 10, 12 properties keep paying off your mortgage. And in the next few years, the first one, 10 years ago that you bought, will be fully paid off. And you're not just getting $300 a month, you're probably getting 800, 900, 1,000 a month. So the
Or you can
beauty
take
that
that money and reinvest it into another property, right?
right, but
It's
when
a
you go back,
choice.
it's a choice. But when you go back to the time freedom point philosophy is,
Right. Yeah.
if I say now I reach the point that I can cover all my expenses out of my passive income, it's not an end point, it's really a start point.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can start living your passion, knowing that numbers as far as income and covering your expenses will only get better over time. They will never get worse anymore.
Yeah.
And yes, you can decide to say, well, 12 is cool, I want 15. Or you can say 12 is cool, I keep it there, knowing that in 5 and 10 years it will double the money that I'm
Yeah.
making now
Yeah.
without having to pay anything or exchanging any of my time anymore. And
That's
that
where the
that
power is.
that is the power. And I think also it really infuses the term freedom. The freedom to make the choices of what do you do with the most valuable commodity that you have, and that is time. And not very many people, if you really think about, can honestly say, I have that freedom. And so that's what we want to try to help them get to, whether they're business owners right now or whether they're still employees considering to become a business owner and get your help, Pete, to do that and build a turnkey business. Whatever the situation may be, you want to have a vision that allows you ultimately to do the things that are not depending on the exchange between time and money.
Yeah. I
And that
love
is
that.
true freedom that you want to work for. And
Yeah.
that
And
gives you energy, motivation, all that kind of positive stuff that you need to stick with it.
starting off with that clarity, I think, is the most important piece, right, Axel? And I always talk about clarity creates confidence and confidence ignites momentum. And from that perspective, having the clarity of what that point is going to allow you to activate what it is that you need to do and want to do in order to create that life that you want to live. Like you said, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, it doesn't matter. It's the same sort of flow. And how are you creating that life that you want to live, either through your investment properties or through your business or whatever it may be, but using it as a tool to better your life and give you a better future, I think, is the real key recommendation here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you look at, and we didn't go through rattling down all that bio stuff, and I don't want to do that, but just in a nutshell, I was born in a normal middle class family. I joined the Air Force, became an Air Force officer, retired from the military, and started my own business. It's a pretty normal
Yep.
life. And I then lived through all these steps that I just very high level described to get to the time freedom point. I think the hope that I bring when we have a chance to talk like we do
Yeah.
today is that people understand a normal person, not somebody who was rich or inherited anything or so forth, can go through this journey in a reasonable time. Just so you know, I retired and started my business in 2005. Now,
Yeah.
admittedly, that's 16 years, but for the last few years, I'm at that point,
Hmm.
at that time freedom point. So it's pretty much within the concept, and I have done all the steps myself. So I'm not saying this to brag or put myself on a pedestal, but to say, people, a normal guy like me can do it, and I can help you do it too.
That's great. That's great. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the time you spent with us here today, Axel. And why don't you let everybody know how to get a hold of you, where they can go to learn a little bit more about Axel Meirhoefer?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can email me at axel@idealwealthgrower.com. If you like to set up a call or anything like that, just go to idealwealthgrower.com on the website, and it immediately has one of those annoying pop-ups to say, do you want to schedule a call? Or if you just want to poke around a little bit, either on the website, but what I would probably recommend more is either going to our podcast or this one that we're recording right
Yeah.
now, as well as the YouTube channel, because everything that we do, we also put on YouTube. So for those people who rather like to watch a video than listen only, we put a lot of the information and advice and terminology stuff and so forth on YouTube. So those two things, website Ideal Wealth Grower or YouTube Ideal Wealth Grower, and you find me and find us, and then we're happy to help you.
Awesome. And we'll certainly put it in the show notes as well, Axel. So I want to just say thanks again. It's been a real pleasure reconnecting with you. And you've brought lots of value and some thought-worthy things here today for our entrepreneurial audience to think about how they can create a better future for their lives and businesses. So
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
really
I mean,
appreciate it.
we need to give them something that they do with all the profits they get out of their turnkey business.
All right. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now.